Okay. Awesome. Ready to go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Say Again with me, Amrita Tripathi. And I'm so delighted, and I cannot tell you what a challenge and logistical exercise this has been to bring Monaz Ranina in front of us today to feature you, Monaz, on this episode of Say Again. Has really been my dream for weeks and weeks. Thanks for taking, thanks for taking the time.
It is such an honor, Amrita, to be with you. And we've been through such a roller coaster ride, back and forth, and finally we're here.
Yeah.
I think time is the biggest factor of life, trying to match timings
Yeah.
across boundaries. And I've been a big fan of your work anyway. So
Thank you.
I'm really happy and excited to be here.
That is so kind of you. So, Monaz, you're a voice artist. You've been a voice trainer working with Miss India contestants, no less. And you've been the voice of several audiobooks, which I'm really excited to unpack with you. You've done brand ads. And I read somewhere that you've been in this industry for about 3 decades. So, you've really seen things change. Is that all accurate, firstly?
It's just about 3 decades, honestly. I mean, if you were to count non-commercial aspects, I actually started when I was 8. So my debut on the mic was when I was 8.
Wow.
And it wasn't a paid job, but I think dubbing really started at that point when I did a Nepali film for Roshan Shet and with Okshi Tayyabji. And I was this young girl doing something for the United Nations WHO or some such stuff back then, and a Nepali film. And I kind of liked it, and it sort of stayed within you that, that's the kind of stuff that you like. But you're so little at that time to understand, what careers are. I mean, you have no clue about that, right? So, and then it just stayed in the back shelf, and then came school and, elocutions and debates and drama and speech and drama and all of that, being from Delhi. So I had wonderful teachers who taught me all of that. And yes, commercially, I think it's over 25 years that I have been in the industry, voicing, babbling through different machines, different brands, and yes, training beauty queens, and now even the male pageants, the Mr. India pageant. So there's a lot that happens.
That's so exciting. Okay.
And also corporates. I train a lot of corporates also. I train influencers, actors. So basically, anybody who needs a great sounding voice, to speak and to widen their horizon. Let's put it that way.
I think that's something I'd love to pick up on immediately, and then talk to you a little bit more about the sort of beauty pageants and what your take is on beauty, and especially your association over the years. When it comes to voice, it's something that I feel like people who've been in, say, broadcast, or who've been in entertainment, or who've been in these industries that are very public facing, have known for a while. You need to learn how to modulate. You need to learn how to use your voice really as a tool, right, in a repertoire.
Yes.
How do you approach, for example, corporates you're talking about? What do you think makes sort of voice so powerful? What's the biggest myth about it? And I'd love to talk to you a little bit more also about voice and confidence, because it seems to be such a big, it's a really important part.
It is. It is. So you're working with corporates and voice. I think the whole there's an entire stigma that being a corporate, some of us can speak. Of course, a lot of corporates are great in speaking, and there's a lot of public speaking that is involved. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of positive being in the corporate space. There's a lot of public speaking required. But what I've realized is when I start training corporates, it's the baggage that they carry with them when they're speaking that spills over through their presentation. So not being comfortable with themselves. There's some corporates who are very comfortable and who might not want to change a thing about them. But there's a lot of baggage in the mind, in the unconscious mind, that kind of unravels as you're working with the voice. And for me, it's all about storytelling. I've always believed that your voice has to be the voice of a storyteller. You are narrating a story to be as simple as you can, to be unassuming, and to really be comfortable in your body type, in your position, looking at yourself in the mirror. On the other hand, it's also, there's a whole dilemma of judgment. So you see, when we're speaking, there's a lot of judgment that happens, especially in the corporate space. And I think it even happens with press conferences. It even happens with influencers, beauty queens also, for that matter, pageantry also. There's a lot of judgment. What are people going to accept me as? How do I take this forward? So to be comfortable in your body type, to be comfortable in your breath when you speak, that's what makes you a great speaker. So I think for me, it's breathing that is the biggest transition that makes voice so magnanimous and so mighty, and comfortable breathing. How comfortable am I when I breathe? Am I comfortable with myself when I'm speaking? So a lot of issues are tackled when I train people across the spectrum, be it beauty queens, actors, influencers, or corporates. It's the same rule. It's not different.
Right.
It's all the same. We're all in the same box. We are all in the same box. I mean, I would look at myself also like that when you say 20 years down the line, 25 years down the line, and I'm still learning. Even as still a student, I'm still learning because there's so much to learn. There's so much to unravel that
So interesting.
there is no definition of perfection. You
Yeah.
can't be perfect, but you can just aspire to be that. You can just aspire to be that.
This is like a pageant. I feel like you have the perfect answer when someone asks you one of those questions. But when it comes to voice, then what would you say is the biggest myth? Because you just said there's a lot of internal baggage. We've done public speaking modules with people, and confidence comes up a lot because sometimes people don't want to project how nervous they actually are, and it's actually eye opening for folks to know most people before going up on a stage or grabbing a mic, there's a certain amount of nerves. So sometimes you kind of have to fake it till you make it, but it's good to learn the tech. Right. So what's the biggest myth you would say?
See, here, faking it to make it is not my philosophy. I've always believed that voice is a feeling. Your voice is a feeling. And the biggest myth in the world that exists today about the voice is that it's not a feeling. It is just a tool to communicate. But here you've got your thought on one side, and your thought needs to be dressed up. Okay. When you're speaking, when you're delivering something, when you're making somebody understand something or comprehending something. So with those parameters in mind, your voice actually is the most magical tool that can take the shape of any object, any feeling. It is consciousness for me. Voice is consciousness. It's so vast. It's almost surreal for me. Voice is actually a temple, Amrita. And when you're talking about voice, it brings about that whole trance state that you get involved with. So am I allowing myself to enter that state? That's okay. That's your little baby.
Expressing her voice. I want to say using her voice to the best of her ability. Okay.
Need that. Am I allowing myself to express? Am I allowing myself to break boundaries? Am I allowing myself to be comfortable? So it's all about giving permission to your voice to behave, because it is a behavior. It is a behavior. It is a feeling. Am I in touch with that feeling state when I speak? Most of us are not, because we're only content driven, even corporates. Presentation, and that's it. I work with a lot of corporates, and to loosen them up is an amazing task, but it's so beautiful to see the end product. Once everyone's really loosened up and just gotten so comfortable with themselves that here I am sitting and just having a conversation, right? Having a conversation. The moment we do that, your voice starts melting down and you become very comfortable with yourself. So the biggest myth is that we don't allow ourselves to feel that our voice is a feeling. Our voice is a feeling. It's a behavior. Yeah.
And what is the biggest resistance you face? Because there's something very personal when you're talking about these exercises you do. When I worked a little bit in the corporate space, I realized you have a lot of resistance, right? Because you have to kind of unlearn and then learn. And I think a lot of people just jump back to maybe it was elocution classes in school, which is a completely different thing, right? It's a very stilted kind of.
It's breaking conditions, Amrita. It's actually breaking conditions, breaking barriers, breaking the glass ceiling. I won't even say glass ceiling. I think it's just deconditioning. It is just deconditioning. And as I train people, I am also learning. So there's always learning from a corporate. You're always learning, but letting go. You see, when you're so guarded and you're so boxed up, you don't have the freedom of allowing yourself to express, allowing your breath to move, allowing those lovely pauses, allowing articulation to take place, or beautiful enunciated technique. So tuck into a nice whisper, use the bottom of your gut, right down in your core and say, I'm so happy to be here today. Get that lovely deep voice, and just in little pockets. It's all about allowing, giving permission, letting go, surrendering, feeling comfortable. So one of the biggest resistance area I feel with corporates and with everyone is just letting go. And here the trainer's perspective comes in, where I do my best to make people feel comfortable. So it doesn't matter who the person is. It could be a celebrity, it could be a footballer, it could be a big time influencer. But at the end of the day, we're all students. It really doesn't matter.
It's so interesting because you have to create that sort of psychologically safe space for people to do their best work with you. That's fascinating. I didn't even think of this actually. That makes so much sense. You mentioned influencer, celebrity, football. I'm presuming these are all kinds of people who have come to you. I mean, in this day and age, is your clientele is across the board? Is it because of I guess social media and
It's all across the board, thanks to social media, thanks to Instagram to make it so amazingly convenient to connect, thanks to LinkedIn, and also word of mouth. I've always felt that existence really helps. It's mainly word of mouth. If you've done well as a trainer, people remember you. Someone else will recommend the other person back to you, and yeah, I mean it just spreads. So the actors, budding, aspiring actors, models, of course, and most of the models want to get into the acting space, the influencer space, some motivational speakers, and lots of other people, corporates, of course,
yeah.
across the spectrum. Um, and yeah, that's it. And a lot of kids also, a lot of children, a lot of college children also who want to
Wow.
work their voice out and then become great voiceover artists and do audiobooks. So
So amazing.
yeah, that's a big one.
I want to talk more about audiobooks. Okay, but first let me ask you a few things. If we were to give you these scenarios, so if, for example, you have someone who comes to you and says, I really want to learn how to own the room, and I want you to give me like a gender lens also. Is it different when you have women clients and men sometimes? Is confidence a challenge? Do you have to talk to women in a certain way to sort of deepen their voice and not sound shrill, etc., etc.? So one is owning the room. This comes up a lot with leaders, right? Like they want to walk in and immediately have the room in the palm of their hand. What would your advice be?
If you want to own the room and walk your talk, I think the first advice would be set an intention. And this is for men and women. What is my intention when I speak? Am I having a good time? Is it all about being bossy and being the leader? But being the leader is actually being invisible. I feel being the leader is being invisible. So am I invisible when I'm there in that room? Do I give everyone in the room a warm hug when I'm speaking? Do I make it so volatile? Do I make my voice expand so widely that I engulf everyone inside that room? So to say, I'm mentally giving them a hug and really connect with my deepest storytelling methods. So that's a big one for leaders. Okay, so owning the room, setting up an intention when you're owning the room. That's a big one for men and for women. And for women, yes, easier to work with women than men. It has been. Yeah, I have to tell you the truth. It has been. Women, because we have that camaraderie with us. We know what we feel. Women are different. I'm not saying that men are not. They're also great. And to see that transformation come out is amazing. For example, we had this lovely young boy called Gokul Ganesan, who won Mr. India and went to be Mr. World representing India. And was such a gem to work with. And even currently now, I've got this very sweet young boy, Shubham, who's going for a pageant called Mr. Supranational. They're very unassuming, very innocent, but to see that whole growth chart expand and see them shine in the spotlight is so overwhelming and so nurturing for a teacher.
Yeah.
I've looked at myself more as a teacher than a trainer because trainer is a new word, but I think
Yeah.
teachers where we all come from that aspect. I've learned from someone, I'm passing it on to someone. It's like that. But yes, when we see them shine, it's something so beautiful.
And then two more scenarios. If you had to tell someone, who's looking at sort of closing a deal, like negotiating, persuading, wants to close a deal, wants to be, in control there. Though I love what you just said about leaders being invisible, but we'll pick up on that as well. Versus somebody who wants to just make sure they're connecting with people, sharing that empathy. Is there a difference in voice? Is there a difference the same person can, wield?
Yes, so of course we can. And here, voice acting has really helped me a lot with training. I have to say that being a voice actor has made me who I am because the ups and downs, the modulation techniques, breathing, pausing correctly, articulating, enunciation, all of that, tucking in your breath, all of that makes a huge difference. If you're connecting with a deal, striking a deal, it's always important to really to be on the other side to listen. So empathy in the room is something so important that we take for granted. being empathetic, empathy towards listening to the other person, agreeing, and also being very soft in giving your opinion. So you don't have to be like a boss person and say, yes, that's my deal. But you've got to, just melt forward, maybe just see a little lotus bloom and see what that is, like smile at the end of it. And your smiles at the end of your lips right here melts the other person when you're really working with a team. That's my vision of working with people, and being genuine and speaking from the heart. I think that's another thing that we tend to forget. We're so complexed into doing our job and just getting it done. But if you just breathe and really connect and just get inside before you speak, and you just know what's going to happen, so there is a moment of surrender there, then I think the deal will just happen, right? If it's meant to be, it will just happen. That's what I believe in. Yeah. And what was the other thing you were asking?
Yeah, so actually you already linked it. Like when you want to go in and connect with people, you still have to show that empathy, be able to listen.
Absolutely. So I think empathy is a big game changer.
Yeah.
Vulnerability and empathy, being there for people and not faking it at all, just being your true self. But using the breath makes your voice nice and deep, nurturing, has the ability to take somebody else into that state of transportation, really allowing those beautiful pauses to stand like fabulous walls, that allow the other person to listen and to tuck in and say, wow, it's like putting a quilt on top of yourself and the AC is, say, 18 degrees or 17, and you really want to tuck in. But जैसे हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, we put the kambal across over our head and we go to sleep. You want that dark room. It's a little space that you're giving with the breath when you're speaking. So yes.
I love that. And then, by the way, it's so soothing and calming to hear you speak. I feel like we should keep, like, I don't know why you don't have a podcast at this point. We're going to discuss that at some point.
I'm going to start one very soon. It's on the cards, and I really want to start one and invite people and have conversations with them. I just love the whole space of podcasting. I think it's great, to reach one another, and I see it on thoughts, and it can be such a beautiful world if we all did it mindfully.
Yeah, I like what you said about the pauses and listening. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So because we have limited time, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. And I do want to ask you for some tips also before we close. So, when we're talking about public speaking, I was telling you that I tell people sometimes I'm okay with fake it till you make it in this context because people tend to be so stressed. You said that's not your philosophy. I'd like to ask you a few of the common, mistakes or perhaps when people haven't had time to practice or learn from you, for example, some of the things you just said. And also, what are some of the biggest fears that kind of lead us to that, state of kind of near panic? Because, even the simple tips we've given people have helped, which is just look down, break eye contact if you're getting stressed out, find one person in the room who looks friendly and just communicate.
Absolutely. So if you were to ask me a few tips.
And what are the biggest mistakes you see people making?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we just enter the room and we start speaking. It could be a webinar. So I've always maintained, and this is something that I practice, is take your time, get acclimatized with the room, get acclimatized with the person you're with, have that little dialogue, that little happy banter that you have. And if you're on stage, then look at the room, look at that space, visit the space before you enter, and then start speaking. Get very comfortable with the dais, with the mic, with all the paraphernalia around you. Okay. In fact, even get that lovely chemistry with your cameraman, with the logistics team at the back. Check your microphone, do all of that before you start speaking. Take a lovely deep breath, look at people and say, good evening, everyone. I am so happy to be here. And really feel that happy feeling to be there. Allow your heart to really sink into that feeling. So a great exercise that I give to all my students across is to write down the sounds that you are listening to every single day. Keep a journal, and as much as you can, just write down sounds. So if you're listening to a fan, write down fan. If you're listening to your footsteps, write down footsteps. If you're listening to your hungry stomach, then you write down stomach gurgling, okay, or whatever. You're listening to the faucet, write that down. Cook a whistle, write it down. What it does, Amrita, is it actually opens up your eardrum to start listening to your own voice. Most of the time when we record or when we speak, I hear a lot of people say, Monaz, you know what? I love speaking, but I don't like the way I sound. And that's the feedback I've got. But the point is, we've not listened to other things around us to allow ourselves to listen to us. So when you start listening to objects outside, you start listening to your own sound, and it just gets into a beautiful space. Yes, because your voice box is inside the unconscious mind. It is not here. That's something that I learned from great teachers, that your voice box is in the unconscious mind. It is not here. And when you connect with that matrix out here, there is magic that really unfolds. Another beautiful exercise is to write down your feelings. So when we speak, we're only concerned again with text, again with what we have to say. Suppose you're an MC and you're going up to do an MC job, then to be comfortable with the audience is great. But how do I know myself? Do I even know myself before I'm starting to speak? So keep a journal, write down everything about yourself. Who you are, what are your feelings, what was your childhood like, bring all that out into text, and also communicate with feelings. So if you're feeling happy, then what kind of happiness? Am I feeling blissful? Am I feeling nurtured? Am I feeling elated? Am I feeling top of the world, excited, celebrated? Okay. So all these are feelings. Joyous, for example, is very different from bliss and happy. And when I use these techniques in voiceovers, it's very beautiful because you can't see me, but you can feel me through a product. And I think this goes with all voiceover artists. But the ones who are there to stay are very deep with this philosophy of, stay in that feeling and write that feeling down. It also increases your vocabulary, right? So when you do things like that, you have an expression on your face, then you're not worried about what you look like. So again, this fear of, am I looking okay? Are my teeth okay? Is my hair okay? Is my makeup okay? Yeah, what do people say? And if they're not looking at me, then are they judging me? But if you're comfortable with yourself, then that's it. That's your story. That's your game changer. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So profound on so many levels. I love that. I love that. So, when you've been working with Miss India contestants, just coming to, like, because that's been going on for so many years, have there been major changes? If we're tracking 2 decades, the trajectory of, of course, at one point it was very unusual as a career choice, and then it's got so much exposure. It's such a sort of settled industry now. Can you take us through a little bit of that and how that impacts contestants who come to you? Are you finding that the exposure has made them more aware?
I think the exposure, I think pageantry for me became very interesting because it became a sport. It is a sport. It is a sport of transformation. It is such a beautiful sport if you look at it at one level. There is huge transformation happening for the girls and the boys, the young ones, and even married women, because it's their time to get into themselves and acknowledge themselves, like get allowing themselves to get transformed through glamour and beauty. But what they learn with me, especially with the subject of voice crafting, is to use your voice not only for pageantry, but later on even for movies, for podcasting, for being that influencer, for doing a TVC, a television commercial, or even reading an audio book. So voice for me is one of the biggest tools in pageantry because it's how you make people feel when you deliver that answer. But again, sounding authentic. Back in the days when women spoke, they were profound, they were fabulous, but there were just a few of them who could actually do it. Then to be pageant patty is not what pageants are about, the typical pageant answers. It's now moving towards conversation, to make sure that you're having a cup of coffee with someone when you're speaking. Do you really believe in what you're saying? And is that your purpose? So there is a lot of purpose also involved with pageantry. A lot of the young ones have taken it to another level. I remember Manasa Varanasi training her. I think she was 2020. She already had a beautiful sounding voice, but that girl actually took pageantry to another level. She really drove it with purpose. It wasn't just about running around trees and movies and stuff like that. It was heightened purpose. She would do something for wildlife, did something for plants, and really would put it up more than her face. She would put up other objects and resonated with that space. So that for me was very rich and very real. And she's actually used her voice to talk about different things in life, which is so beautiful.
It's not the stereotype we have, right? Because usually when you think of the beauty industry, you're like, oh, superficial and very unforgiving standards of beauty for others. But it sounds like some of that is changing. Would you say that people are getting more in tune with authenticity? We're seeing with Gen Z, for example.
I think they're trying to be as authentic as they can.
And also, when you talked about audiobooks, I'd love to hear a little bit, from you on what does it take? Once for my first book, they put me in a studio to see, I was used to be a news anchor, so I'm sure you'll be able to do the
Yes.
reading for your book. No, it's so much stamina that you require to go through.
Easy.
Take us through a little bit of what that's like.
Audiobooks for me has always been sitting at. I mean, that's the visual that I've always had. Is you sit on the bench of the banyan tree and you read a story. Okay, it's as simple as that. Imagine yourself in Shantiniketan. Not that I've gone there, I haven't been there. But what's it like? That was the imagery that really came to me. Is narrating a story. Can you take people beyond time and space and read that story? Can you become the author's mind while you're narrating a story? Or you're doing a self-help book. Can you identify yourself as one of the case studies and play that narrative out when you're working with that? Couple of technicalities when you're doing an audiobook is breath work, lots of breath work. So there's a lot of work that we do as voice actors and voice trainers, especially for me as a voice trainer, is to tuck your core right inside, suck it inside, and then speak. So you're not actually breathing out at all. You're using your core muscles. Your chest is right inside, but you're using your hands to meander that breath, to move the breath from one note to another. And that's register technique. But you're not sounding voiceovery at all. You're sounding as though you are right in front of the person. You're alive, you're awake, and that person can actually feel you. So it's so tangible, and you can feel that entire vibration inside. So when I do audiobooks, I get very involved with the character. I get very involved being the author's perspective or reading through the author's mind. So I'd love to have conversations with the author. Done a lot for Penguin and HarperCollins, of course, are dear to big publishing houses. And I've always had that lovely conversation with them as to what would they want from that book. And then kind of paint that on the empty canvas and then speak. So it is a lot of breath work. It's a lot of reading. It's not reading from here, but it's reading from your core. And that's what I teach. I teach people to use their core and speak, whether it's pageants, whether it's corporate training, or anything, to anyone and everyone. It's using your core and engaging that to its maximum to get the strength and your stamina out. And then you don't get tired when you're doing long sessions. But it is a tiring task to do an audiobook. It's not easy. It's not just reading a book. You actually seen that whole movie in front of you. You had a conversation.
Yeah.
I remember doing a book on sex therapy for Neha, and it was so interesting that at the end of the book, I almost cried because I had something that I could connect with my mother at one level in that story. And then there was a little bit about Sai Baba that came at the end, that and we both had the same the same place to go to actually go to. Sai Baba is my guru too, and was Neha's too. So that there was a commonality between that. And there were tears at the end of the book when I did that, because it was so beautiful to see people come out, talk about their situations, and at the end she honors Sai Baba at the end of it, which was very beautiful for me. Everyday Ayurveda again was another epic book that I did because I just lost my mom. And
So sad.
no, it was many years back, and thank you for that. But at the end, she's kind of goes back to her childhood, and it was a journey for me to go back to that place and and see myself in that space. And there were again tears of joy. So audiobooks has given me immense joy when I do that, because I get so involved in the long narrations.
Interesting.
Then we did Kamala Harris again.
Wow, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it does come down to storytelling, and like you said, connecting. It's clear that you do that at a very deep level, and you're very selective. Just in the interest of time, though, I have to come back and do another episode with you down the line. But two last questions for you. One is, if you had to give me 2 or 3 tips, and I'm just going to be, because I talk very fast. I think fast sometimes. I don't. My late father once told me, if you would stop to think once in a while, it would be good for you. And I'm like, how do you know I'm not thinking faster than I speak? But that's obviously something I have to work on. Like pacing myself, things like that. 2 tips that you'd give me as a podcast host, or in general, that would be really helpful.
So I think your most important giveaway from me would be breathe, Amrita. To breathe, to do some amazing box breathing, like inhale to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 4. Okay, inhale 4, hold to 4, exhale 4. And the dynamics of it are very relaxing. Okay. Also, get yourself into the rhythm of speaking. So there is a sur, there is a ta, there is a sur, there is a ta. Let's get back to basics, Indian basics, which are so beautiful, you know. And try and use more registers when you're tucking in, and, getting yourself very comfortable in a deeper register. Try and move up to a mid-range register like that. And of course, get excited and use the head voice also. So 3 different registers.
I love that.
That can be a game changer for podcasters.
Okay, I will put these into use and then come back to you for a follow up to see. And
Awesome.
a final question for you. We like to ask people, life is so busy, constantly going through things and, point to point, cut to cut. When you take a moment to stop, and it sounds like you're someone who does this anyway, but I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the things you're grateful for that you'd be happy to share with us?
I'm grateful to have, to be alive. Grateful. I mean, gratitude is something that just runs all the time while I'm speaking. So the more grateful you are, um, I think there's no, you can't really sum it up. I'm just grateful to have the most beautiful guru in my life, and so blessed to walk every day with blessings. So everything for me is a beautiful blessing. Yeah, everything in my life I have seen as the best gift that God could have ever given me, and this is a gift. Talent is not mine, so it was given to me to use, to help, to be there, and also not get attached to it. It's there, but don't get attached to it.
Wow.
So, yeah, I feel so blessed, Amrita. I mean, I truly feel this is a blessing. We all have a voice, but to know that it can be a game changer, and to be able to be there for others, I think that's what we all are here for, right? We're all here to be there for each other. So yeah, gratitude all the way, eating, sleeping, drinking, walking, and I won't even be here without that. So it is everything.
I love that. I think that is so inspiring to hear from you. And I really appreciate your taking the time out from your hectic schedule to share with us. And of course, all the teaching you're doing. So more power to you. And thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's been so lovely being with you. You yourself are such a dynamic personality. I mean, there's so much to you. And, the lovely book that you've written. And I keep looking up stuff on you. Planning you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll take it. Thank you so much. We'll hopefully be in touch again soon.
Yes. Thank you, Amrita, for having me over.